everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Commissioner Chronicles on the DLF YouTube channel. That's right, we're back. It's time for another edition of the Commissioner Chronicles, and this time we're talking DEVY drafts. So we've covered DEVY leagues before. Make sure to check that out on the DLF YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Most of that was about forming the league and writing the bylaws and all those things for basically how to run a DEVY league in general. Now let's get a little bit more specific, and we're going to talk about how to run a DEVY draft. Things that you have to take into account when you're doing the DEVY draft is, the first thing is, and this is in the bylaws as well, you have to notify / make sure you inform everyone who is available in the DEVY draft. Now that doesn't mean that, oh, like here's this list of 800 different people you can possibly pick from. You can only pick from this list of 800 people. What it means is, what is the archetype? What is the type of thing that you can draft in the DEVY draft in this league? So can you only draft juniors or later? Can you only draft freshmen? Can you only draft college players? Can you draft anyone who is living? Can you draft anyone who's in high school or later? There's all types of DEVY leagues, all types of DEVY drafts. But the one important thing to, communicate is before the DEVY draft, obviously before the league even starts, but also as DEVY draft approaches, a reminder, hey, these are the type of players that are available. Any player that's enrolled in college, or any player at all. Just make sure that the expectations of who is available is communicated to your team or to your league, so they know, okay, this is the player I can take, this is a player I can't take, and they can figure that on their own. One of the good things that I like about DEVY drafts a little bit more than, DEVY auctions is that you don't have to necessarily say, oh, this is from the specific list that you have to choose from. DEVY auctions in a certain way have that. DEVY drafts don't. It's like, okay, when they were up, you can pick any player in college or whatever your setting is. Just make sure everyone knows who is available in the DEVY draft. Another thing to account for is, can previous years drop players be drafted? So I've seen previous years, I've seen it three ways, honestly, with DEVY players. If a DEVY player is dropped during the season or during the off season, what happens to their DEVY eligibility as far as a draft? Some people say if you drop a DEVY player, they're immediately on the waiver wire. Some people say if you drop a DEVY player, they're only available through the DEVY draft or future rookie draft. And then some people say, okay, once they're dropped as a DEVY, this is more rare, once they're dropped as a DEVY, you can't pick them up until they're a rookie. So make sure that is communicated. The rules for players once they are dropped, if they were dropped the previous year and they're available in the DEVY draft, make sure that is known to people that, like, oh, this player got dropped, but I can now take them in the next year's DEVY draft. Make a list of the players not available. So it's a very easy thing to do. All you have to do is go to the rosters, go do the taxi squads on your league, and you copy and paste every single DEVY player and put it on the message board, put it on your league chat and say, hey, here are, and this obviously only accounts for year 2 and beyond DEVY leagues that, those players didn't commit and didn't go to the next level, didn't go to the NFL. And so they're still on rosters as DEVY players. So make sure that you have that list. And so when people are looking at, okay, these are the DEVY players available, okay, minus the ones that have been taken in previous years and are still on rosters. So make sure people have that list with them so they don't. The last thing you want is for someone to take a player who was taken in a previous year, and then for some people to make picks and I didn't see that person wasn't available, or I didn't know that person had been taken previously, and then you have a mess of people. They're like, oh, I would have taken the next guy. So there can be errors made when people don't know the players that aren't available via the fact that they were drafted in previous years. Now, I've seen DEVY drafts be done 3 different ways. I've seen DEVY drafts be done on a spreadsheet. I've seen DEVY drafts be done on a message board, and on the software you're using, whether it's a My Fantasy League. I think that's really the only one that I guess Fantrax those are the 2 that I think you can draft DEVY players on, really. But for the spreadsheet, that is very simple. Just set up a draft order on a spreadsheet, and this is maybe a little bit more conducive if you have a shorter draft. It's a little bit easier to put together. But a spreadsheet, just put the order. Okay, here's whether it's 1 round, 2 round, 3 round. Obviously, when you're setting up a DEVY league, the amount of DEVY rounds isn't decided the day before the DEVY draft. That's decided when the bylaws are written. So that's not really part of the DEVY draft process as a commissioner. But as far as like a spreadsheet, whether it's 1, 2, 3 rounds, you set them up and you allocate. Okay, you put the name of the owner for each pick, and then they can just put, okay, if the first pick has it, they will put their first pick, and then they can notify the next person, whether it's the league chat, email, DM, whatever it may be. You can use a spreadsheet, and then you have the entire DEVY draft on a spreadsheet to reference, and each person will pick and then notify the next person on the clock. Next is a message board. Message board is a similar concept. Pretty much you just reply to the thread. The commissioner updates the top thread as each pick comes on the board, so you can see, okay, what's there or what has been taken off the board. The message board is probably the most commission intensive pain, where you got to update each time there's a pick. And then lastly, the one that I think is the best way to go about doing it is on the software you're doing. Like I often do for this series, I talk about my fantasy league and how I do it for that one. What I do for that is I set it up just like you would a rookie draft, and I have each person, when they're making their pick, they just pick any random player that's available on the draft software, whether it's a rookie or a rookie free agent draft. And in the comments column, that is one thing, I'll hit on that in a little bit. In the comments column, they will put the player and the position and the school. So let's say I'm going to take Tim Tebow in the slot, and then in the comments, I'm going to put Tank Bigsby, running back, Auburn. That's one thing I definitely advocate for all players to do. It makes commissioner's life a lot easier. Make sure when you are drafting a DEVY player, make sure to put the name, make sure to put the position, and make sure to put the school, just so it's very clear who you are taking. There's people with the same name. There's different players that have, like, there's people with the same name that are different positions. Also, just makes it easier rather than having to look it up every time. Like, okay, what position does Josh Johnson play? So make sure when you're making when as the commissioner, tell people, hey, make sure you're putting team, player, and position when you're making your selection, whether that's on the spreadsheet, the message board, or the software. But if you're doing it on the software and you pick pick a random player, put the comment of the player you're picking, the commissioner goes in and they replace the pick with, instead of Team Tebow, it turns into Tank Bigsby. So it's a really easy way to go about doing it. It's my preferred because it's easy to do the trades that way. You can offer trades in the middle of the DEVY draft just like you would in a normal rookie draft. So that's the best way to go about it during it, as far as a player experience perspective, in my opinion. But any of the three work: spreadsheet, message board, or software. Just make sure that you are, check. As the commissioner, my number one advice is make sure you're checking, make sure people aren't picking a player that's ineligible or picking a player that's already owned, because that is something that can cause problems during a DEVY draft. So those are your go-tos when doing a DEVY draft. Make sure everyone knows who is available, what kind of players they're allowed to take. Can they take players that were dropped previously? Make a list of players that are not available, and then tell them how to make the picks and then do what you need to do in order to put those players onto their teams. That's it for how to run a DEVY draft. If you have any questions about DEVY drafts, hit me up on Twitter at NPowellFF. Make sure to like and subscribe to the DLF YouTube channel. It means a lot. We really appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys next time.